Hey there, this is John with a real quick intro message. We've gotten off track last couple of weeks on podcast release dates, so please binge listen to them and we'll be right back on track in a jiffy. You are listening to the Simple Success Podcast, financial life coaching from a happiness perspective. Thanks for joining us for this next episode, where we get into important questions that you have and how they can be explained so that they don't get in the way of succeeding. Here we are in episode 9. This is financial life coaching from a happiness perspective. Coaching happiness. Last week we talked about the emergency broadcast system and how it was always a test, thank God, but how investing is not a test. This week the pod is about habit, the number one reason for investing success. Countless researchers and authors have written about the topic of habits. Among them are Charles Duhigg, author of The Power of Habit, James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits and does a blog at jamesclear.com, and, of course, Mark Manson, the author of, among other things, The Subtle Art of Not. This is a family-friendly sort of podcast, at least for now. How does this play into simple success? Tell you in a minute. Hello, everyone. This is John with the Simple Success Podcast, financial life coaching from a happiness perspective. Because we know you want to show us some serious love in return for the tremendous benefits you get from us, please head over to https://anchor.fm/ simple success. That's one word, simple success, whack support. There, you can choose from a $9.99 per month investor level of support, a $4.99% level, or a basic intro level of just 99 cents per month. That's not much when you compare it to a stockbroker, right? And this is so much more sensible. To leave us a voice message, which just might see the light of day in a future podcast, go to https://anchor.fm/ simple success. Again, one word, simple success, message. I won't repeat those links because weird. And anyway, show notes. In that spirit, today's episode is Habit, the number one reason for investing success. Other influential thought leaders in this area include The One Thing by Gary Keller of Keller Williams fame, and of course, tons of behavioral psychologists. How long does it take to form a new habit? Anyone here say 21 days? That's a common answer that's been around for about 50 years. It didn't even occur to me to question it until a few years ago when I, shall we say, again became conscious of the power of forming new habits. As I questioned, I found that source of the 21-day number. It's an otherwise wonderful book, perhaps one of the most important books written in recent centuries, called Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. He was writing about the idea of course correction, the idea behind cybernetics. To give you an idea of this, imagine flying in a plane from one city to another, thousands of miles away. When the flight crew enables autopilot, sensors in the plane keep it on course to get to the destination city lined up on the runway, ready to land. During the flight, the nose of the plane strays off course countless times, and the autopilot gently brings it back on course, getting it safely to the destination. That covers cybernetics in a very oversimplified way. So where did the 21-day thing come in? Well, that came into play for those of us, hopefully all of us, who understand how habits work, even when they work on us, and wanted to purposefully introduce new habits. How long did they have to fake it until they make it, to use a common phrase? And 21 days became the most common answer. Turns out that some things can move from active action to passive action in 21 or even fewer days. But some things take closer to 250 days, and the average across most things, if not all things, is 66 days. So we'll go with that. 66 days. Mark your calendar. That's about 9 weeks of this weekly podcast. No, you don't put the habit in place faster when you binge listen, as I know some of you do, but you can still binge listen, and in fact, I encourage it. Okay, we'll say worst case, in 9 weeks, you can have the habit in place. Will you be perfect? No, you won't, not yet, but you will be a step closer to perfect, and that's big. A big, huge step toward fun is simple. Things have to be easy until they become habits. Even if we're the most stoic of all the stoics, we will end up reverting to our habits. And while we can both have and nurture all habits, bad as well as good, when we line up what we do with what we want, we have motivation to bring only good habits to pass. Things which serve us, or more accurately, things in which we've already decided to be willing to find out why that's good. As we said last week, the biggest step you or anyone can take toward getting to any goal successfully is to make it simple and fun and done. How we make habits, particularly effective habits, is what we look at next. Details on that coming up. Let's get on with some of the things to remember about today's topic, which again is habit, the number one reason for investing success. The first one is start small and break goals down. Last episode, we talked about having goals and how important that is, but there's more to this idea than just setting goals. Let me give you a quick example. Every January, and this is not the January effect, which we'll talk about in a few weeks, people all over the world make a resolution to lose weight, to look better, to feel fit, or some such equivalent. So they sign up for a gym membership. Gyms love January. It's revenue like they can only dream of the rest of the year. The problem is that all those people, me included, and anyone else listening to this podcast is also included, have not taken the time to make the goal small enough, let alone specific enough. Lose weight, in quotes, is not the same thing as lose 10 pounds, also in quotes. There's a reason that all those health apps for your phone want you to be specific, and it's not just because they can't do the math otherwise. That is true, but they also don't want you to feel like you can let yourself off the hook so easily. Why? Because on the day when you get overwhelmed, and that will happen, you will let yourself off the hook at that place you've already created. It's so easy. Wondering if that's true? Go look at a gym nearby you on February 1st. There will be a ton of parking spaces and lockers there. So instead, I say you take that goal, whatever it is, and break it down into little things. Instead of, in quote, today I'm going to write an entire book, then laughing to yourself and turning on Netflix instead, break it down to today I'm going to write the outline. Or maybe it's today I'm going to write for 10 minutes. What works for you is what's important here. But then, even if you still aren't laughing to yourself, break it down some more. How about this in quotes? Today I'm going to start an outline. And forgive yourself over and over. Be kind to yourself. Be firm in the sense that progress is the most important thing ever, but also be your own best friend when you need to try again tomorrow. Next is rinse and repeat. Now that you've set one or more goals, and now that you've taken the time to be both realistic as well as kind to yourself, you're ready for the next step. That is doing it. That's also doing it again, and then even again. Is it too small? The answer is no. Let's go back to the example I used a while ago about the importance of ROI, or return on investment. In the phone app StepBet from Way Better Apps, gamers like me and you join together virtually in a game, usually 6 weeks long, where they each put up $40 of their real money into a pool. And at the end of the game, they split the pot among everyone who meets a customized, for them, that person, customized for them step goal. It's pretty common to make a 10 to 20% ROI on each one of those bets. And for those of you who know any detail about the makeup of ROI, that number is not on an annual basis. Head in the clouds. Yeah, I know. What I mean is, since you made that in only 6 weeks instead of 52 weeks, your real ROI is a whole lot higher. I mean, like a whole lot. The small part? 20% ROI on $40 is only $8. And that's not enough for dinner for some people, but that is not the point. The point is practicing getting a phenomenal ROI and practicing putting real money at risk, but at the same time, keeping that risk really, really low. That's got to be appealing. In fact, in a shameless plug here, although I really don't think it qualifies since I don't get paid, I would like to point you all to a StepBet game I've created which starts very soon, April 6th in fact, to help demonstrate what I'm saying here. The name of the game is Yes I Will, all one word, YESIWILL. Yes I Will. To join, get the StepBet app on your phone, open it, and search for Yes I Will, all one word. That will take you to where you can join in a game. You can also go to the link in the show notes, and they will send a link to your phone when you put in your phone number. If you've never done one before, you'll need to connect to your bank, and you'll need to have either a Fitbit, a Garmin watch, or some access to Apple Health through a phone or a watch, so that they have an impartial way to see if you really do it. After all, money is involved, your money and other people's money, so it's good to be careful, just not so careful that nothing good happens. You don't have to be an Apple user either, since you can get StepBet in the Google Play Store for Android phones. If you don't have an iPhone or a Droid, I sympathize. But then again, you're probably not listening to this or any other podcasts either. I'll do more of those games in the future, assuming you guys all join in like you should. And there will be some other cool challenges as well, so stay tuned for that. Next point, patience. At the risk of stating the obvious here, since Even if we get generous or stoic, depending on your perspective, then you manage to earn 2, maybe 3 meals for yourself and 0 other family members, in return for 6 weeks of effort and 6 weeks of risk. Did I mention uncertainty? Yeah, well, that's kind of what risk is, at least in one respect. I mean, really, if you're certain of something, then there's not much of a risk, is there? And when I say patience, I mean taking away all attachment to time. Yes, that's a part of the Buddhist idea of taking away attachment to outcome, but we're not going that deep here. We don't have to. Instead, we pointedly identify any benchmark we already have, and any we develop after today. We recognize it for what it is, someone else's benchmark, and we get rid of it, choosing instead to put our own benchmark in its place. We don't have to. Instead, we pointedly identify any benchmark we already have, and any we develop after today. We recognize it for what it is, someone else's benchmark, and we get rid of it, choosing instead to put our own benchmark in its place. What's an example? Well, imagine yourself in your town, your neighborhood, your driveway if you have one. You're talking to the person who lives next to you. And that person says to you, well, my broker is blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah says. What do? Well, if you're like most people, you listen. If you're like a lot of those people, you create new benchmarks. At first, you do this quietly. Well, if their broker, this is in your mind now, quote, in your mind, well, if their broker is blah, 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 and they made 16% last year, well, that should be my goal, instead of the stupid 12% or whatever I made, unquote, in your head. Now, this is back to me again. Don't laugh. This happens all the time. In fact, it's a key reason which got in the way of me wanting to continue to be a licensed stockbroker. When anyone is judging you, or in this case, if you let anyone judge you, then you are putting your own happiness down the list. And when you do that with a goal like this, or any other goal, but one where you really get only one shot at doing it right, at least as far as we know, then you're allowing someone else's standards to become yours. Instead, what I'm suggesting is the same thing as creating your own happiness. It's just from a financial perspective, as I've promised. And last, don't shock yourself. Just a little bit. That's how you start. Stay standing on the ground and just grab the rope. Hold the rope. Don't climb the rope. Not yet anyway. That day will come. And since we're going to do it right, it will be easy when it does. So ridiculously easy, in fact, that 2 other things will happen. The first one is that we might not notice it. How's that for irony? Something happens and we don't notice it. Remember, that's good. Also remember, this is financial life coaching from a happiness perspective. Coaching happiness. Here's a great personal example of a time when something good happened and I didn't notice it. Rabbit hole. This is the part of the podcast where I'm learning to put those tangents I often go on. I had to create this segment to have a place to put those tangents, with the idea of tying them into the topic of the episode. Thanks to my rabbit hole advisor, I'm undertaking an effort to stay on topic and not fall down those rabbit holes like I know I do sometimes. I've also learned from her that, well, at least in Australia, one can avoid falling down rabbit holes by talking to the rabbit. In other words, letting experts go on those tangents. I'm going to keep that in mind when I'm looking for guests for future episodes of this podcast, so everyone is forewarned, in a humorous way, of course. Skipping the detail, I am now convinced that just doing it, just getting started, is the first thing to focus on. Since we're taking it small and slow to start, we don't have to waste time with overanalyzing, even with analyzing at all. Instead, we let our own experience get us there, which in turn helps us find a form of happiness by helping others. I said 2 things happen. The first being that we might not notice something happening. The second one is, since, as I said, it's so easy, that we will forget to do it again. But don't worry, I like repetition, if you don't already know that. See what I did there? And just like magic, I turn the question around, this time into a statement. Air quotes, should I mess with my habits? Becomes, air quotes, of course I improve my habits. It's flipping the script. Remember, this is financial life coaching from a happiness perspective. Coaching happiness. Since a big part of that is your happiness, I'm going to walk down another street, one without rabbit holes, by calling on expert guests and, most importantly, you. When we're done with that, we'll point you to the voice message link for future pods. In this Simple Success podcast, as well as in our webinars and masterclasses, we are very, very much going to want to hear your story. Well, to be real, I mean in future episodes of the podcast's webinars and masterclasses. This means you. Your participation is critical to our mutual simple success. It's important to know how you think, what you've thought, what you've tried, and what you've been unsure of trying. As we told you at the beginning, and as you also find in the show notes, we have ways you can contact us. It involves a special link where you can leave us a voice message, which just might see the light of day in a future podcast. We may have an email address for you as well in the future, and we'll let you know when that happens. Together, we're going to make it great. We're going to do what even we didn't think possible. We know a lot about you already because we know ourselves. For example, we know that you know how to listen to a podcast. We also know that you probably know how to subscribe. The reason every podcast asks you this is because when you subscribe, you automatically download all future episodes of that podcast. This means better rankings, more attention from advertisers, more money, and that means more and better stuff for you. So your motivation is simple and easy. Subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. There is no try, there is only do. Remember, this is financial life coaching from a happiness perspective. Right after this, we'll explore some more important detail you should know. But for now, use your imagination to help create your story. And to remind you, everyone listening can head to that voice message link in the show notes to record a voice message for a future podcast. Anyway, to wrap up the story, habit, the number one reason for investing success, we take it slow. We make it simple. We take it slow. We're deliberately small. And most important, we've made ourselves okay with that. We don't waste our own brains on a fantasy that we can have everything and not risk anything. And we also don't shock ourselves into trying to go 0 to 60 without any practice. It's sort of why a lot of financial companies, air quote, recommend that you use a broker while glossing over how that costs you and sometimes even twisting the reasons. It's also why most do-it-yourself advice ignores the huge roadblocks that you can face when you don't have any experience. You should have some guardrails when you're just starting out. It's just up to you to make sure they don't get in your way. Next week, we're going to look at another concept, and that is how investors make money. That got picked for me by my topics randomizer, so you know I'm not repackaging this stuff, but instead making it relevant so we can all, me included, learn how to do this right. We're going to bring that into the world of investing, and it's going to be a great episode. But for now, remember, happy No Selfies Day. All you need to do is practice, after which you'll get good. Gracias por escuchar. A la próxima.